The silence of forgotten gods. Today, in museums and ancient ruins, we can still see the statues, temples, and images of gods once worshipped. At one time, they were the center of spiritual life, prayed to, feared, and honored with offerings. But now, all that remains is silence. The gods who once held absolute power in human imagination have faded into history. No one worships them or calls their names anymore. They exist only as witnesses of the past, not as real divine beings. This shows that gods do not disappear because of evidence disproving them, but simply because people stop believing and passing those beliefs on.
The rise and fall of ancient pantheons. Throughout history, entire civilizations built their worldviews around complex pantheons. In Sumer, gods like Anu, Enlil, Enki, and Inanna decided the fate of crops, floods, and empires. Egypt honored Ra, Osiris, and Anubis, tying their lives and deaths to divine order. The Greeks prayed to Zeus, Athena, and Apollo, while the Romans adapted these gods into Jupiter, Mercury, and Venus. Later, the Norse worshipped Odin and Thor. The Aztecs revered Quetzalcoatl and Tlaloc, and countless others trusted in their own deities. Yet all of these once powerful gods eventually vanished, not through disproof, but because societies evolved, collapsed, or were replaced. When cultures shifted, so too did their gods, leaving behind only myths, ruins, and fading memories. Why gods disappear. Gods rarely die because someone disproves them. Instead, they fade as the cultures that sustain them collapse or transform. Belief is deeply tied to power, politics, and social systems. When empires fall, their gods vanish with them. Sometimes new conquerors impose their own faith, replacing old deities with fresh ones. At other times, scientific knowledge or cultural change makes old gods unnecessary. And, often, it's simply the passage of time. Belief withers if it isn't passed down to the next generation. This reveals a critical truth. Gods do not survive because they are eternal, but because people maintain them through memory, ritual, and repetition. Belief in the modern world. In today's world, we see the same pattern repeating. Countries that were once deeply religious, like Sweden, Norway, or the Netherlands, now report some of the highest rates of non-belief. In Iceland, a large portion of young people no longer believe in any god at all. Even in the United States, long seen as one of the most religious nations, church membership has dropped below half the population for the first time in history. This decline isn't caused by persecution or dramatic debates. It's simply apathy. Rituals feel outdated, traditions lose their meaning, and younger generations stop inheriting the stories. When belief is not reinforced, it naturally fades. Gods lose their grip quietly, not with a fight, but with silence. The illusion of the one true God. Many believers today assume that their religion is the final truth, while all past religions were just myths. This mindset creates a sense of historical arrogance, believing that out of thousands of gods that have come and gone, only their current one is real. But history shows otherwise. Every extinct god, from Zeus to Ra, from Odin to Quetzalcoatl, was once worshipped with absolute sincerity. Their followers believed just as deeply, prayed just as passionately, and trusted just as strongly as believers do today. Yet, those gods eventually disappeared, not because they were disproven, but because people stopped repeating their names and passing on their stories. If truth alone determined which gods survived, the list of forgotten deities would be far shorter. What this reveals is simple. Belief is not about eternal truth. It's about social inheritance, repetition, and power. Gods as cultural creations. Gods have always depended on human structures to survive. They need temples, rituals, sacred texts, myths, priests, and communities to keep them alive in people's minds. Without these systems, belief begins to fade. A god does not exist independently of culture. He exists within it. When empires collapse, when languages die, when traditions are interrupted, gods vanish with them. This shows that deities are not eternal, independent beings, but cultural creations. They reflect the values, fears, and needs of the societies that worship them. The more centralized and powerful a religion becomes, the better it can preserve its gods for a time. Yet even that cannot guarantee permanence. From mighty Zoroastrianism to ancient Chinese folk religions, once dominant faiths eventually declined, leaving only fragments behind. Gods do not disappear because they fail to answer prayers. They disappear because the systems that carry them, social, political, and cultural, fall apart. Belief and upbringing. Faith is rarely discovered. It is inherited. A child born in ancient Egypt would have worshipped Isis and Horus without question. One raised in Sumer would have prayed to Enki. In Greece, they would have sworn oaths to Zeus. Belief follows geography and culture, not universal truth. This reveals something essential. Gods survive because they are taught, repeated, and reinforced. Without early indoctrination, belief fades quickly. Sociologists note that religion relies on repetition. Rituals, prayers, stories, passed down from generation to generation. If children are no longer taught to pray, the gods of their parents soon disappear. This is why every religion claims its God is eternal, yet history shows otherwise. Belief is not about finding truth, but about inheriting stories. Each generation thinks it has discovered the final revelation, but time proves otherwise. The thousands of forgotten gods once felt just as real to their believers as today's gods feel to us. The decline of belief in modern times. In today's world, we are witnessing the same pattern of fading belief that shaped the past. Across Europe and parts of Asia, entire populations are quietly stepping away from organized religion. Countries like Sweden, Norway, the Netherlands, Japan, and the Czech Republic now report some of the highest levels of non-belief in history. In Iceland, nearly half of young people say they no longer believe in any god at all. This decline is not driven by hostility or persecution. It is driven by indifference. Sociologists call it religious disaffiliation. People simply stop finding meaning in rituals, doctrines, or institutions. The old stories no longer answer their questions, so they drift away. Even in traditionally religious countries like the United States, church membership and belief in God have fallen to historic lows. The gods do not vanish in fire or debate. They fade when people stop caring, when the rituals become irrelevant, and when belief is no longer passed down. This slow, quiet erosion is how religions die, not with a fight, but with a whisper. The illusion of permanence. Every generation tends to believe that its religion is the final one, that all previous gods were false, but this one is true. This mindset is a kind of historical arrogance. People mock the myths of the Greeks or Egyptians, forgetting that those beliefs once shaped entire civilizations with absolute certainty. To their worshippers, Zeus or Ra felt just as real as any modern deity feels today. If thousands of gods have come and gone, each supported by scriptures, miracles, and devoted followers. What makes the current ones different? History suggests they are not special, just newer and still supported by strong institutions. With time, even today's dominant religions may become cultural artifacts, their gods remembered only in books and ruins. The illusion of permanence blinds us to the reality of belief. Religions do not last forever. They rise, they evolve, and they eventually fade, just as countless others have before them. Why gods disappear? Gods rarely vanish because they are disproven. Instead, they fade for practical reasons. Conquest replaces one set of beliefs with another. Cultural shifts make old gods irrelevant. Scientific discoveries offer new explanations that myths once provided. And, most often, time itself erodes devotion. Belief is fragile because it depends on constant maintenance. Temples must be built, rituals performed, stories retold, and children instructed. When that cycle breaks, the gods begin to disappear. Even language changes can erase a deity. When names are forgotten, their power dissolves. This shows that gods are not eternal forces beyond humanity, but social constructs bound to culture and history. They survive as long as people keep them alive through repetition, fear, comfort, and community. Once that ecosystem collapses, so too does belief. Gods as human creations. When we look across history, one pattern becomes undeniable. Gods are born from culture, shaped by society, and sustained through tradition. They are created out of fear, wonder, and the human need for order. We place them in the sky, in oceans, in fire, and in stories. We give them personalities, commands, and rituals, and eventually, we let them go. Some gods lasted only a few generations, others thousands of years, but none survived unchanged. Even today's religions have evolved so much that their earliest forms would be unrecognizable. This constant reinvention shows that gods are not eternal beings outside of human imagination. They are cultural creations that live only as long as people believe in them. The silence of forgotten temples and empty rituals teaches us a profound truth. Belief does not endure because it is true, but because it is repeated. Gods rise with civilizations and vanish when people stop passing down their names. If thousands of gods once considered eternal can disappear without consequence, what does that say about the ones still worshipped today? History reminds us that faith is not discovery, it is inheritance. To question belief is not to reject truth, but to recognize the patterns of human culture. Gods do not die because they fail. They die because we outgrow them. And one day, the gods of today may be nothing more than museum relics, just like all the others.